After 40, something quietly changes. You eat the same foods, you move roughly the same amount, you may even diet harder than before. Yet fat loss slows down, especially around the belly, and this is where the most damaging belief appears. My metabolism is broken. My age is the problem. It's too late now. But aging does not suddenly switch off fat burning. What changes is something far more subtle and far more important. The internal rules your body uses to decide when it is safe to burn fat. After 40, insulin behaves differently. Muscle no longer absorbs sugar as efficiently. Stress hormones stay elevated longer, and the body becomes more protective of stored energy, especially visceral fat. This is not failure. It is adaptation. Most people try to fight this change with fewer calories and more effort. That only makes the body more defensive. In this video, you will learn what actually changes inside your body after 40. Why fat loss feels slower even when you do everything right, and how understanding these shifts allows fat burning to work again, without extremes. Because the problem is not your age. It is that your body is playing by new rules. After 40, many people do exactly what they are told to do. They eat less. They skip desserts. They exercise more consistently than ever before. And yet, the body responds with silence. The scale barely moves. The belly feels softer, not smaller. Energy drops faster. Recovery takes longer. Sleep becomes lighter, more fragile. This is usually the moment when frustration turns into self-blame. You start thinking you lack discipline. You compare yourself to your younger self. You assume that slowing fat loss is simply the price of getting older. But that explanation is incomplete. The real shift after 40 is not about calories. It is about how the body prioritizes survival. Over time, your body has accumulated years of metabolic memory. Late nights, chronic stress, repeated insulin spikes, inflammation that never fully resolved. None of this causes immediate damage, but together they slowly change how your system makes decisions. Muscle tissue becomes less responsive to insulin. The liver becomes more cautious with energy release. Stress hormones linger longer after everyday challenges. As a result, the body grows conservative. Fat, especially around the abdomen, is no longer seen as excess. It is seen as insurance, a buffer against uncertainty. This is why strategies that once worked effortlessly now feel exhausting. Your body is no longer optimized for quick weight loss. It is optimized for protection. And when protection is the priority, fat burning becomes secondary. Most advice ignores this shift. It treats a 45-year-old body like a 25-year-old one, and then blames the person when results do not match expectations. That creates a cycle of restriction, frustration, and eventual burnout. In this video, the goal is not to motivate you to try harder. It is to help you understand what has changed internally, hormonally, and neurologically. Because once you understand why fat loss slows down after 40, you stop fighting your body. And when you stop fighting it, progress becomes possible again. Next, we need to look at what actually changes inside your body, hour by hour, and why those changes directly affect how easily fat can be released. To understand why fat burning slows down after 40, you have to stop thinking in terms of effort and start thinking in terms of priority. Your body has one main question. Is it safe to release stored energy? Before 40, the answer is often yes. Muscle tissue absorbs glucose easily. Insulin rises and falls quickly. Stress hormones spike and calm down without much resistance. Fat burning switches on and off with little friction. After 40, those systems no longer respond the same way. The first major shift happens in muscle tissue. Muscle is one of the largest consumers of glucose. As you age, muscle cells become less sensitive to insulin. This does not mean they stop working. It means they require stronger signals to absorb the same amount of sugar. As a result, insulin stays elevated longer after meals. And as long as insulin is present, fat cells remain locked. This alone slows fat loss, even if calories are reduced. The second change happens in the liver. The liver is your metabolic traffic controller. It stores glycogen, regulates blood sugar, and decides when to release energy. After years of constant stimulation, the liver becomes more cautious. It holds onto energy longer and resists switching into fat-burning mode. Late meals, alcohol, and chronic sugar exposure amplify this effect. So even during fasting, the liver may delay the signal that allows fat to be released. Then comes the most underestimated factor: stress hormones. After 40, cortisol does not disappear as quickly as it used to. Sleep disruption, work pressure, and even calorie restriction keep cortisol elevated. Cortisol raises blood sugar. Blood sugar triggers insulin. Insulin blocks fat burning. This creates a loop where the body feels constantly on alert. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. The body becomes less willing to take risks. Stored fat, especially visceral fat, is treated as protection. Visceral fat is not passive. It actively responds to hormonal signals. It grows in response to insulin and stress, and it resists release unless conditions feel stable and predictable. This is why fat loss after 40 feels stubborn and slow. Not because the body is failing, but because it has shifted into a more defensive operating mode. Most people try to override this with more restriction: fewer calories, harder workouts, less rest. But restriction increases stress. Stress increases insulin, and insulin tells fat to stay. The key insight is this: after 40, fat loss depends less on forcing a deficit and more on restoring metabolic trust. Once the body senses stability again, fat burning does not speed up dramatically. It resumes quietly, consistently, and sustainably. Now that you understand what changes internally, the next step is knowing how to work with these changes instead of against them. After 40, fat loss stops responding to pressure. It starts responding to signals. The goal is no longer to create the largest calorie deficit possible. The goal is to create an internal environment where your body feels safe enough to let stored fat go. Here are the most effective adjustments that support fat burning after 40, without extremes. 1. Give insulin predictable quiet time. Your body responds best to rhythm. Eating at consistent times, especially finishing meals earlier in the evening, allows insulin to fall fully and stay low long enough for fat release to begin. Irregular eating keeps insulin guessing, and uncertainty blocks fat burning. This does not require long fasts. It requires reliable patterns. 2. Prioritize muscle as a metabolic sink. Muscle becomes more important with age, not less. Light resistance training, walking, and daily movement improve insulin sensitivity in muscle tissue. When muscle absorbs glucose efficiently, insulin does not need to stay elevated. This indirectly unlocks fat cells, especially visceral fat. 3. Reduce stress signals, not just calories. If fat loss feels harder, stress is often higher than you think. Late-night workouts, aggressive fasting, poor sleep, and constant restriction tell the body that resources are scarce. The response is protection, not fat loss. Calm consistency beats intensity. 4. Support the liver instead of overwhelming it. The liver needs recovery time. Reducing alcohol, late sugar intake, and frequent snacking allows the liver to switch roles from storage to regulation. This transition is essential for fat burning during fasting and sleep. 5. Eat enough protein and micronutrients. Undereating protein increases stress hormones and muscle breakdown. Adequate protein signals safety. It protects muscle, stabilizes blood sugar, and supports metabolic confidence. Fat loss after 40 improves when the body senses nourishment, not deprivation. These adjustments do not produce dramatic overnight changes. They rebuild trust. When insulin becomes predictable, when stress lowers, and when the liver is no longer overloaded, fat burning quietly resumes. Next, it is important to understand who should approach fat loss differently and what realistic expectations actually look like after 40. After 40, patience becomes part of the strategy. Fat loss still happens, but it follows a different timeline. Internal changes often begin within days, but visible changes usually take 2 to 4 weeks. This delay is not failure. It is recalibration. If you have thyroid conditions, diabetes, or take medications that affect blood sugar, fat loss requires closer monitoring and often a gentler approach. Extreme fasting or aggressive calorie restriction can backfire by increasing stress hormones. Another common concern is muscle loss. Muscle loss is not caused by age alone. It is caused by undereating, inactivity, poor sleep, and chronic stress. When protein intake is adequate and movement is consistent, muscle can be maintained and even improved after 40. One more misconception deserves clarity. Fat loss does not need to feel exhausting to be effective. If progress requires constant struggle, something is misaligned internally. Sustainable fat loss after 40 feels boring, predictable, and calm. That is not a weakness. It is a sign that your body feels safe. After 40, your body is not broken. It is simply wiser. It no longer responds to pressure the way it once did. It responds to understanding, rhythm, and stability. When you stop forcing fat loss and start supporting the systems that regulate insulin, stress, and energy flow, your body does not resist. It cooperates. This is not about reversing age. It is about working with the biology you have now. If this video helped you see fat loss differently, share your experience in the comments. What changed for you after 40? Subscribe if you want science-based explanations without hype, and in the next video, you will discover why eating less can sometimes make fat loss slower, not faster. Your body is not your enemy. It has simply been waiting for the right signal.